Hey, thank you for joining. So today is a webinar that I've really been looking forward to doing. So the theme for this month has been about finding your passion. And I've known Lauren Lewis now for the last 4 or 5 years, and Lauren and her husband, Jeff. And when it came to both a topic we talked about previously, which was living with your opposite, you know, how we're attracted to and often marry a person with a very different ID to ourselves. And then I thought about the finding your passion topic. Lauren, you were just an ideal person for me that had some great stories that we could maybe share and be fun to talk through, but I think could be really insightful and even inspiring for other people on our call. So thanks for making time to come and join us today, Lauren.
It's all right.
So let's get into it. So I'll give a quick intro to my background with Lauren, and Lauren, then you might want to share a little bit about you as well. So you live out near me in the Shire area of Sydney, and have a young family and so on. But you started a business that I'm aware of, at least. I think you've actually started several, but Bowerbird Interiors, which I think you sort of half started accidentally, and it just has grown into this incredible enterprise. One of the stories I remember was when you got your last warehouse before you could even move in, you'd outgrown it. So I know you've had incredible growth. But maybe why don't you share with the team, and I'll come back, and I should mention at least your ID. You can see on the screen there, it's 3628. So for those of you who are familiar with the ID scoring, you'll know those numbers are someone who's very entrepreneurial. But you can see the strong drives there are improvise and avoid complete. And it's all about how you innovate, get started. All your energy is at the front end of things, and wherever you have a lot of passion and excitement and positive energy, you sort of feel invincible with whatever you can do. And I think you're going to hear that in space today from Lauren. So maybe Lauren, share a little bit about, you know, an intro for you, like, you know, just a background, and particularly, you know, when this concept of the passion that you have first started to become apparent to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, way back when, so my daughter was 1 at the time. I was a stay-at-home mum. I worked in a whole, so I actually studied nutrition and dietetics, so that's my degree. And by the way, I knew for the whole time that it was not my ID, and I hated every minute of it. And I still kick myself to this day, why did I continue? But I'll take it way back when I was very young. I was always very creative. I loved interiors. I was telling Paul, I'd get my parents to take me to show homes that were fully furnished and just sit in it for hours thinking, how do I get this? And then I actually saved up $100 when I was 8 and told my parents I was ready to buy the house and move out. So it just from a young age, I've always been creative. I with everything I do, I'd collect rocks. I could, you know, make things out of leaves. That was just who I was. And
hey, Lauren, anyway, how old were you? How old were you when you started asking your parents to take you to show homes?
From about 8, they would take me. So the deal was I'd watch the football games, and then they'd take me to the show homes as my sport. Right. But you know, like always, I'd get my dad to paint my room every 3 months. He loved that. And just I would, you know, for Santa, I'd want new lamps and new bed sheets, and I was always trying to create something beautiful in my bedroom. And it just made me really happy. And I would tinker in my room for hours and hours, you know, moving things around. And so it was just something that it just gave me so much happiness, I guess, and something that I love to do. I don't know why that didn't stem onto throughout my school years to pursue that. I guess the influences I had around me, I mean, I had great influences, but it was more like, let's get a real job and a real career. Hence why I went into, you know, I guess the health sector, because that is something that I'm passionate about too. But, you know, 4-unit maths and epidemiology and biochemistry is not my thing. So, but in order to pass, I had to improvise. I had to spend a lot of money and find a lot of people to help tutor me to pass the course. So, you know, there was a will, there was a way. I passed, and So that's it. That was exciting. But, you know, all the jobs after that, I never felt super passionate about it. I would go to work. I didn't overly love it. I just knew it wasn't, you know, my body tells me if I'm doing something that is not, I guess, on track or on purpose. And then, yeah, so I obviously had some time off when I had my daughter. And I remember saying to my husband after about 6 months in, this is not me. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mum. You know, I want to do something. I want to be around people. And so I met a friend. So one of my friends, I met a friend through her. She had had started Bowerbird Interiors as she was a sole trader doing interior design and had just started property styling, maybe had 1 or 2 houses worth of furniture. And then, you know, we were on a walk. Jeff and I can recall, you know, the exact street we were in at Cronulla. We're walking down, and I said to him, that's what I want to do. I'm going to ask her if, you know, I can buy into this, and I'm going to work 1 day a week. It's going to be so great. You know, I can buy a few cushions and do some styling, and it's going to be great. Honestly, like most things, I was just winging it day by day. Went and asked her. She said yes. But then that's when the real passion kicked in. I just started, the force was so strong. I couldn't stop. I wanted to keep going, and I wanted to keep building. And then, you know, I was doing sales and, you know, making cold calls and building relationships, buying furniture literally on the go. I'd win a job, I'd buy the furniture. I had days where I'd walk into Country Road and say, I need 80 cushions. And the guy thought literally that I was joking and was like, I know, you know, Tina from the front told you to come and, you know, joke with me that you need 80 cushions. I'm like, no, get them all off. I need them now. Like, I didn't know if the credit card had money on it. I was just hoping for the best. But I loved it. And I have never felt like this rush of like, this is what I want to do. And I just kept going. It's like, when you find something you're passionate about it, you just do whatever it takes, and it's enjoyable. So I did, you know, eventually we bought out our partner, and Jeff came on board. I knew, I mean, Paul, you know Jeff. I knew that he would take, well, look, we used to call it my hobby, because was I really running a business? I was building a business. And I heard someone say the other day, starting a business is easy, but running a business is fucking hard. And that is the truest thing I have ever heard. Those early days, like, everything's new, everything's so exciting. You don't care if you're $100,000 in debt. Like, it's such a bizarre feeling that I was just all in, and I just kept going. I just honestly didn't care about anything but pursuing what made me really happy. Then I knew when Jeff came on board, things were about to change, and they did. Like, the number one thing he said was, you know, I need to build some foundations and some systems and processes, and, you know, get rid of my Post-it notes. I'd have bills fall out of magazines, like, no joke. Like, I was doing the invoicing, which is scary to think now. But yeah, so it kind of started off as I'm going to have a crack at this. I'm going to do something I love for a day or so, you know, 1 day a week to keep me occupied. But once I started, there's just no stopping me. And I think once you find something, it just naturally happens. I didn't have to force anything. I just went for it, and I've not looked back.
So Lauren, what's really interesting is you actually had, you know, you look back now and you can see that passion was there in you at 8 years of age, and it was really a passion. I mean, there aren't many 8-year-olds that ask their parents to take them to show homes so they can sort of play with interior design, or go and, you know, spend their pocket money on believing they're going to go and buy a house and design it, or paint their bedrooms every 3 months and so on. So that was there, but it's interesting how much that didn't then come back into your life, really. And I mean, as you said, you're always creative, but it wasn't nurtured as an actual passion. So it wasn't for you about even finding your passion. It was probably more about rediscovering it, you know, at some point later. And for you, it sounds like it was quite accidental, like just something you liked and a hobby, and the business, the fact that it expanded was just the result of doing something you loved, right? It wasn't really or was it more intentional to you to try and grow something out of it?
At first, there was no intention at all. Honestly, I tripped over this. Like I think you had in some notes, was it business or passion first? I never in my wildest dream thought that I could start a business, or you could have a business out of styling. Like none of that even came into my mind at all. I was like, I just want to do something that I love and that it's going to make me happy and get me out of the house 1 or 2 days a week. But when I started doing it, it was like just caught like wildfire, and I accidentally built a business.
So give the audience a bit of an idea now of the size of the business. Like, how many homes do you style, and where do you do it? What are the components? How many staff do you have? Just give us some idea of what you've been able to grow.
So I'll give you an example. When Jeff first came on board, so I was 2 years in, I remember our first ever meeting. He said, right, let's aim to do 16 installs this month. So 16 for the month. So that was huge. That was a huge goal of ours. I mean, we do that in our sleep now. We furnish over 1,000 homes a year. That's just the style to sell arm of the business. We do other things, which is also really exciting. But that 16 target is a vivid memory in we're in a warehouse in Kurnell. It was our, we had built a shed as the office, then we moved into a warehouse, then we got a bigger warehouse. We're on to another warehouse. We're now looking for our next warehouse, which is going to be double the size of what we're in now. So the growth has just been incredible. In the early days, there was 2 of us. We started with 2, and then, I remember hiring my first person. I said to Jeff, how do I hire someone? Like, can we afford to hire someone? He said, well, you can't afford not to. That has also been a very strong lesson. You have to spend money to make money. You have to keep moving forward no matter what. And we just don't fear that anymore. We've got over 40 staff now. And I mean, Bowerbird is not Jeff and I, it's the team, it's all of us that are creating something really special. So yeah, it kind of, even though we've been doing it 8 years now, I still feel like day one. Like, I still feel like we're just getting started.
Which is great for someone with your ID. So let's bring the ID into the mix. So you'd already been doing Bowerbird. Actually, I'm not sure for how long before we met, but you came to me for various reasons or referred to me. And
I can remember why. I wanted to stab Jeff in the office, and someone said to me, "You got to go talk to Paul," because I was like, we were, the first few months we were like, whoa.
So different. Yeah, it's one thing to live together, it's another to work together, isn't it? But tell us about your experience when you learn about your ID. And I guess in your case, you had the benefit of learning both about yours and then about Jeff's. But, as Grant has asked in the chat here, what impacted you when you learned about your ID and it said what it said about you? Do you remember any sort of thoughts or insights or just how it resonated with you and what you got from that?
Well, I still remember sitting on your couch. Do you remember how much I was laughing? I kept laughing so loud, thinking, how does he know this about me? This is insane. Like, I just couldn't stop laughing at the fact that someone like me, like, there are others. So this is a thing. People don't check the letterbox. Remember how we were laughing because Jeff was like, she never checks the letterbox. And I'm like, why don't I ever check the letterbox? I still don't, by the way. We still fight over it. But that day was like huge for me because I kept trying to say, oh, I'm going to learn the systems. I'm going to try really hard to, be systematic, and I'm going to try and use my calendar. But I kept trying and failed every time. And I hated it. And then when I spoke to you, I was like, stuff the calendar, do it. I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to keep, going against how I'm wired. But that day you made me realize that I didn't have weaknesses. They're just different. I'm just different to Jeff. He's super inspiring to me, and, you need all his skills to do what he's done. but that's not how I'm wired, and I would be happy doing that. And it's not why I started the journey. So you made me see that being an improviser, and I always have a solution to something, whether it's solution A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I still get it done. So yeah, that day was understanding Jeff, because for instance, to this day, we still do this. I would come up to him and say, I need to spend $250,000 on furniture. And he would look at me and be like, what furniture? I'm like, well, just furniture. He's like, how many couches is that? I'm like, I don't know, maybe 10. He's like, where have you pulled that number from? I'm like, I don't know, I'm making it up. I know I just need furniture. And we used to clash big time on that, because he's like, and I used to think, you're so mean to me. Why can't I've done this for years with it, kind of without you. And I used to just buy stuff, whatever. But you made me see how important that he's a verifier. He needs to say, okay, well, I manage the finances. I have a much deeper respect for what keeps him calm and what helps him be great at what he does. So I really, I guess the biggest revelation is how he works. I used to go up to him and ask him a question. He wouldn't respond to me. And it used to drive me nuts. And I think, what is wrong with you? But you told me with his ID, he needs some time to process to come back to me. So I'll ask the question. I'll go, see ya. And 10 minutes later, he'll wander out of his office and say, okay, this, and that. And it does not even bother me. So just learning what he needs and knowing that, not taking anything personally, and sticking in our own lanes. And I am not shy to just do what I do best. I don't go to the accounting meetings anymore. Like, why? I'm sitting there eating the Mentos thinking, gosh, I'd rather be down there with the cushions, like it's that's just the reality. I'm not a numbers person. But Jeff is, and the rest of the team. But yeah, I think it was just understanding. I learned so much about Jeff and myself that that day, or the day we met you, Paul, that was a huge moment for me to realize that I'm not the only one that doesn't like a job description, that doesn't like processes, would rather go to work with no shoes. This is another thing. Jeff and I fight over, he's like, you need to wear closed-toe shoes, and I wear sandals in a warehouse with a forklift. I'm like, oh, well, if I've hurt my toe, I'll just get it stitched up or I'll get another toe. I'll be fine, And he's like, oh, my goodness, it's like health and safety. I'm finally wearing closed-toe shoes, by the way, because it makes him happy. But, yeah, there's all those little things where I guess it's the path of least resistance, and I don't resist how I'm wired anymore.
No, but it's interesting to go back. So I remember that day vividly, when both of you were here, because to be candid with the, everyone on the call, that it had caused a lot of friction when the two of you were working together. It had gotten to the point where, whilst there's a deep love for each other, you get to the point where not only can I not work with this person, I'm not sure I like that person and the way they do things. And I remember the feeling that you had of almost trying to do things his way.
Yes.
And Jeff wasn't, he didn't feel like he was doing the wrong thing by you. He thought he was bringing maturity to the business and dealing with the responsibility of, we're not playing with one house a month or a couple of houses a month. Now we've got big money at stake here and mortgages on the line and, a family to feed. So he felt all of this responsibility, which with his very diligent ID, that's what he would feel. But I think you tried to become more like that, which was just like totally suffocating you. And I remember that in that moment, the thing that was always special to me was it was like a light bulb for you, but I give phenomenal credit to Jeff, because he could have been with a verifier is often very defensive when they learn information like that and they realize that where they're doing things is not right and they should do it differently. And as quick as anything, he was like, wow, I'm not doing it right, am I? And he just flipped right there and then. And it was like in one hour conversation, the light bulbs went on. You got what you needed, he got what he needed, and you just almost agreed to do things differently from that moment on. And from then, it's just been an incredible journey, not just for the business, but for your marriage as well. right?
Totally. I remember day two, Paul, you were saying that I was sitting there and in my head going, that's it, I'm leaving. I don't, I'm getting a divorce, blah, blah. And then if I just get it up and out, then I'm like, cool, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? Like, and so I say this in my team all the time, let's get it up and out and over it. And that's, up and out, which I think about all the time. And I've used that piece of advice for many years now, is just get it up and out and over it. And I'm totally fine. I've stopped kind of having this internal storm and Jeff's not thinking any of it. Like, Jeff is like this, our emotions, he's just this. I'm like this, and knowing that about each other and just being able to talk about it is priceless. Like, it has helped so much. And at work, we might work together, have a business together, but we don't really work together in terms of, I have a clear lane that I stay in, and so does he. It's almost like we don't cross over. We don't work together, because obviously if we work too closely together, someone would end up buried, and it would be me. But we just have that mutual respect that he's got his lane. I support him and encourage him and inspire him and all his strengths, and I don't hold anything else against him, and vice versa.
But he's also done a great job of setting you free, right? I think he got the message that day that he can't contain you, so he's got to let you just be the creative director. And I remember, I don't know that I've got the story exactly right, but when you go on a shopping spree to Melbourne looking for furniture or whatever, he sort of just holds his breath, because even if the credit card's got a limit on it, you somehow got a knack for going beyond that. And he's like, I don't know how she does it, but I've learnt we figure it out,
Well, this is the thing now. Like, you go do that, I'll work out how we fund it. So right. I'll come up with an idea or whatever it is. I'll do my thing, and he just says, I'll work it out on my end, and we make it. There's nothing that we haven't made. We've always make it work together. I remember, Paul, you said with both our IDs, we're like Jay-Z and Beyonce. Like, we've got everything covered. I'll never forget, and I couldn't stop laughing so hard, because it's like we've got everything covered in terms of what we need with our skill sets. And well, you were right. I mean, we keep going from strength to strength, and we've got a really special bond, and a special marriage. So
I think that obviously you're married in your case, but any relationship where you're so different to each other, if there's that strong trust and respect for the differences, and what comes through listening to you is that, I often say to people, be in awe of the differences. And clearly you do see each other through a sense of like eyes of wonder, where you go, I don't know how she does that, but just amazing, and vice versa from you to Jeff. And I think that's a really secret recipe. So there's some questions coming up in the chat, Lauren, which we'll get to in a minute about your team. But I just want to stay for a second on the topic of passion, because yes, you've had a great run with your business, but I also know there's been times where there's been some real setbacks and you've had to dig deeper with resilience. How does someone like you do that? For someone who thrives on positive energy, and yet there are times when you must have been really scared and concerned about, have I gone in too deep, or whatever the setbacks have been. Even with the team, I know there's been team challenges at times, and it completely like deflates you. How does someone like you regroup and get back to a point where you're back on track with that passion and purpose again?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we've had lots of setbacks. Different people let you down, or you've hired the wrong person for so many. There's so many setbacks in a business. In resilience, I actually think with my ID, I actually thrive in I call it emergency situations. So if there's something really tough that's going on, it's actually quite strange. I get less resilient when everything's really good. It's going really good, everything's great, and I'm like, oh, okay. But when I hit a bump in the road, it's something kind of, I start thinking, I go into like the improviser mode where I'm like, right, okay, this is going to happen, and we're going to do this to get out of this, or come back from this setback. It's where I start to kind of shine, to be honest. Like, my positivity and my resilience kicks in at all these, when a setback hits. And, it's just a setback. I know it's not the end. And like,
It
all the
sounds like
time.
it sounds like you don't go to that negative a place. It sounds like you stay really positive or confident that you're going to be able to get through it no matter what the setback is. Where do you think that comes from? Because that's really, there's a lot of people with your same drive who would say they get into a depressed place, or they don't feel that same confidence and optimism about how they're going to be able to deal with it. What keeps you feeling so capable that you'll be able, you know what I mean? That's
Yeah. My parents are incredibly resilient. They've had some moments in their life that I can't even comprehend, and no matter what is thrown at my parents, they always remain optimistic and positive. They look for the good. 100% that's come from my upbringing. That, we've had some really tough times, but they just get on with it, and they're just happy no matter what, and that's infectious. And my parents aren't successful in terms of business or having lots of money, but when I look at them, that's success to me, because they give everything to their parents. They are resilient. They like nothing. They're steamrollers in terms of whatever comes their way. Just we get up and over the hump, and we're off again. And to this day, that's still them. And I guess that's where I get it from, 100%.
Well, it's a great answer, because knowing your ID, when someone like you has no options, and if in your mind, because the way you were raised, the only option is to keep going forward, then that's the only way you think. Like, you don't think about getting on a rocket ship and going to Mars, because that's not an option, And I found when people are raised and they've got certain beliefs that are ingrained in them as the DNA of their family, for example, and they don't see any other option, then they just stay on that more positive path. So I think for those of us who have that idea, I think that's, not that I have your idea, but for those of us who are on the call who've got an idea like yours, I think it's good to sort of know, okay, what are the options that maybe stop me from having that same confidence and optimism, and how do I remove them? But if you're raising children that are somewhat like you, the more you breathe into them that this, we always go forward. No matter what happens, we find a way and we go forward. There is no other option. You're planting the right seeds for giving someone like you then that resilience, because when your idea is a very reactive idea. If you listen to your journey, a lot of what happened, you just reacted to it, so you bounced. But whilst you've bounced and reacted to opportunities, you can also bounce and react to emotion, And if you don't have like an internal compass, something that keeps you on the straight and narrow, like your parents' upbringing, you'd be much more wobbly. And I think that great for them, and great that you recognise that it's given you such like a keel, like in a boat. This keel that keeps you upright.
Cool. And I have wobbles. I going down the hill, and you're like, and I can feel myself. Jeff's that keel for me too, because he, no matter what's happening around him, he's this. It's actually incredible. Like last COVID lockdown, he's like, right, we're just going to make this the best thing that's ever happened to us. End of story. I was like, well, okay, cool. He's like, you do homeschool, you take the kids, I'll work the rest out. We do, we're like, oh, okay, cool. There's just no. He just doesn't lose it, and I guess he keeps me really level-headed, because yes, I can be irrational and I bounce around. But I find over the years, when I, if I get scared or worried or whatever it may be, it's short. He's like, all right, I'll give you an hour to be that, and then we're back. So it's it's not taking weeks or years or something to ever recover from something.
So I have one more question, and then I might open it up to the group, so that I know there's some questions people would love to ask of you as well. One of the things we've talked about in this theme of finding your passion is finding passion as if it's a thing that you locate, and there's living passionately. And I think it's clear listening to you, you've found your thing in terms of, the interior design. That's clearly a passion that you have. But how does that concept of, is it about finding your passion or living passionately? How does that land for you? Like, do you think you're more someone that you live everything with passion, or is it more that you found a passion? How would you talk to that particular principle?
Oh, definitely living, because I mean, I don't, everyone says the work-life balance. It's just all life, right? Like, to me, it's all one thing. But I wouldn't be happy just styling homes if I wasn't, passionate about my kids and my friends and my health and my family. Like, at the end of the day, at my funeral, I'm going to want people to know I've lived passionately and been a good person and caring and a great thing, all these great things. If they don't mention I was a good stylist, I'm fine with that. I'm really lucky that I get to do something that I'm passionate about and that makes me happy. But living passionately for me is the most important thing. And time is the most important thing to me, and that's how I live passionately, because we've built a business which allows me time to think about what all those things are and actually live passionately. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
a lot of people don't have the time or capacity to think about these things and actually live it, because it on a hamster wheel.
The nice thing is, whilst some people may not feel they've found their passion, all of us can decide to live passionately,
But
and in everything we do. I'm sorry.
If you live passionately, eventually your passion, it's going to hit you in the face.
Yeah.
It's just how, that's how I think it works.
That's cool. So Lauren, we're getting some questions in the chat, and Grant, I don't know whether you want to elaborate on the question you just asked about Lauren. Can you see the chat at all, Lauren?
I can't, no.
Oh, okay. So over in the chat, Grant just asked, have both you and Jeff both had moments of being flat, and what did you do to get out of it?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Although, look, it's very rare that we're both flat at the same time. There's this weird kind of thing with us. If I'm down, he'll feel it, and then he'll lift me up. And my favorite thing is teamwork makes the dream work, right? But when we're both flat, we just take time. It's like we need to go away. We need to go on a holiday. We need to spend quality time with our kids. We do things that just take us away from the situation. Like, our little guy, he's 6, he started playing soccer and Jeff's the coach. And on a Saturday, the first ever game, we held hands and looked at each other and said, life will never get better than this. Watching our little kid play soccer. And then it's almost like whatever you're flat about just disappears, because we've already got what we need and what we'll ever need, and that is our children and our health. So it's very rare that, when you own businesses, you can't afford to have two people flat, to be honest. So it's not a place that we often stay in or sit in, but we definitely have moments of it, and we take it back to basics, which is quality time and a bit of space. That's what we do.
That was the second part of the question, was, is that your sort of go-to approach? You've come to know that now, if you can just get away from the treadmill, as it were, and get time together and just regroup, that's your go-to to sort of get yourselves back in stride.
Yeah, it's perspective, right? You need to stand back and just realize that there's a solution for anything that we're going through. If we have our kids and our health, there's nothing else we need at the end of the day, right? So this, we'll get through it like everything. But we have moments where we're feeling definitely flat if we've got something going on. But I think over the years you just become better at dealing with things, and the things that you thought were big a few years ago now are so minor that we've just learned to just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's just something. But look, it's like most things, you got to keep at the positivity. You got to keep at the resilience. You got to keep at the moving forward. It's not something you just say, I'm just going to do that. You got to do it consistently for years and years, and it starts to become your response. So, you know, I think it's just learned and so many valuable lessons over the years to be able to, I guess, be exposed to things that we have and seen that we've got over it. So it just becomes shorter and shorter.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm going to open it up now to our audience here. If anyone would like to ask a question directly of Lauren, maybe you've got a similar ID and you want to ask something that might help you. Maybe it's about, you know, you've got a very opposite ID and there's something that intrigues you and you'd like to understand. Whether it's about passion or whether it's about something else, please feel free to ask Lauren. Who'd like to go first?
So who's first?
Now, this is that moment where what's happening, Lauren, is all the avoid improvisers are thinking something through, and then the improvisers are just, you know, they'll ask their question. I think Catherine's got something she was going to ask of you, Catherine.
That's so funny, Paul, because, yeah, I'm going, no, I will not be the first to say something.
That's right. That's right.
Like, and I will not be the first up at the buffet in the days when we used to have buffets. Because, yeah, my drive is, oh, good idea, get up, go for it, right.
Yeah.
So I relate. So I'm reflecting as, you know, co-business managers, massively different risk profiles. And you've kind of shared how you've reached an understanding around that. Mechanically, how do you do that? Have you sat and discussed, okay, we're comfortable with a risk under 100 grand or anything over a certain amount, we will sit and negotiate and discuss, or he just completely trusts you to go with it, or you sit back and say, okay, you manage the risk. And I had a conversation with a client a few weeks ago around whether they were playing to win or playing not to lose, and not that one is more valid than the other. But I'm picking up that both of those are probably represented. So can you comment on that risk management, risk preparation even?
Yes, it's so funny because I have zero risk management anything, because I don't see what I do as risky, because I have like this internal belief that whatever I do is going to work. So we definitely have, you know, we take it case by case, but especially when we're, you know, I'm buying for the business, we definitely have an agreement that, you know, we talk about what I'm going to do before I do it, and I get his approval. So we definitely have that in place, which is really good. But most of the time, if I come to him with something or he comes to me with something, and to be honest, he's a massive risk taker. He had, you know, he built another business, a tech business. He's never built anything in his, you know, tech in his life. And he's like, I'm going to build this and I'm going to spend, you know, millions of dollars. I said, oh, cool, off you go. You go for it. So I guess there is so much trust in him, knowing that he will say no if we have to. I never say no. It just doesn't, it's just not how I'm wired. He'll say, I want to go do this. Oh, we're going to do that. I say, good, let's have a crack, you know? And I guess being an improviser, I'll deal with it later. Because if it doesn't work, well, then we would have learned something, then we'll do something else. It will lead us to the better thing anyway. But yes, we do have, you know, there is a trust there, and there is a respect that he does look at the risk and the financial risk, that I do run things by him before I put the, actually, I don't even have the work credit card and I don't have the bank logons for a reason, because, you know, I have to go to him and say, am I okay to do this? Yeah, and before I wouldn't do that, but obviously knowing his ID and respecting, that's how any business should work. So I try and follow that. But in terms of taking risks, we both back each other 100% at all costs. So
Hey, Lauren, what's the biggest thing you've ever, when you think about that and some of the things you've done, can you recall what the biggest thing is you've done that's really surprised the crap out of him and he's really been shocked? You know, maybe it has been an issue.
Oh, God, that's a tough one. So I do a lot of things that shock him.
But I'm thinking of an amount you might have spent, for example, you know, where you went and did something and he finds out after the fact and it's like, my God, how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, well, I've got a good example. So I think I told you the other day, I hit a point with Bowerbird where we're running a business. I lost my passion because I wasn't working in the business. I was basically, you know, looking after people and you're putting out fires all the time, and I wasn't being creative per se. And I decided to start the Holiday Co, which is, you know, a fashion label. And I was like, I'm going to design my own clothes, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to do this. And he's like, well, okay, you know, and he said to me, you've got the idea, just so you know, I'm not going to execute it. Do not come to me and get me to build it, because that's how we roll, really. I come up with the idea, I start doing all the fun bits, and he builds it. I said, no, I'll build it from scratch. I won't do anything. Anyway, he came. I was like, I've rang someone. I'm going to Byron Bay tomorrow. I'm going to go design the collection. He's like, well, am I coming? I was like, I thought you didn't want to build it. Like, I'm doing it on my own. Anyway, he came along. He ended up building the website and building all the processes for me. And he built the back end, or the execution of the business. You know, I did all the bits that I was good at, did the designing, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, that probably $60,000 into this. And he fully supported it. He knew very well it's not going to work. He knew it from day one, and he said it to me from day one. He goes, I don't think this will work, but we'll do it anyway. So, you know, we did it, and I sold out most of, you know, the first collection, which was really exciting, and I proved a concept. But then, as we say, back to that the risk thing, you know, we're sitting with an accountant and him and our head of strategy, and he said, right, we can do 4 style to keep jobs, or you can sell 7,000 units, you know, of dresses. He's like, the juice isn't worth the squeeze here. And as it turns out, he's like, are you passionate about having a clothing brand, or do you just like clothes? I was like, I think I just like clothes. He's like, we'll just go buy clothes. It's cheaper than, you know, pouring money into a business that as we've learned, businesses don't make money for a few years. You know, so he kind of knew that. He knew I had to go through all of that to come to his thing that he knew already, but he let me do that for a good year. He let me free to do that, knowing the risk was that we we're just going to burn a stack of money.
Yep.
So, you know, he was shocked that, you know, I could pull together what I needed to pull together for that business. And he saw that I was doing it, I was passionate about it, but I was really just looking for another creative, just another way to be creative, because at that point in time, you know, I kind of lost it when you start running a business. But we've got the layers back in the business where I can just work on the things I want to work on, and that's all the fun, creative things that I like to do.
It's interesting listening to you that, you know, I hadn't thought about this before, but it seems to me that trust has a lot to do with passion, you know, and whether that 100%. Trust is in yourself or whether it's in each other, but it probably starts in yourself. But to keep passion and living passionately alive, trust is in there somewhere. You know, I'm not quite sure of the formula, but it just oozes out of you listening to you today.
Oh, 100, yeah. And I trust Jeff with anything and everything, but I trust myself too.
Yeah.
But I trust, you know, if it didn't work, you still trust yourself that you tried. You know, I'm not scared to. I just don't fear things not working, because it's not how I'm wired. I don't actually think about it not working.
Right.
And look, that could be a weakness. I'm not sure. But when I go into something, the thoughts of the risk profile and will it not work, it's like when I walk past the letterbox, I know it's there, but I never check it. It just does not enter my mind. If I'm going to do something, I have full belief that it's working. It's just a strange thing. I never think about things not working.
Right.
Until they don't. and then they don't work, and I think, okay, well, we'll try something else. So, yeah.
Thanks, Lauren.
But he shocked at a lot of, we shock each other all the time.
So other questions, folks, or comments? Who else would like to ask something of Lauren?
Can I say something?
Go, Mary. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Do you know Lauren?
I do know Lauren. She lives 1 block away.
Oh, what about this morning? That was funny.
I got her.
Meredith,
she got me a good one.
Meredith texted me to remind me that I had a Zoom call because I'm notorious for not using calendar. I was like, shit, is that today? I'm at Woolworths. And she's like, oh my gosh, get home.
So I was surprised. No, not necessarily surprised. Interested when you said that you deal in that crazy pressure situation. That's where you shine. And you told me recently about when you came across the guy who crashed his bike. Did he crash his bike? Is that how the injury happened?
Yes, yeah.
And it's so funny because I know Lauren as someone who absolutely melts at the sight of blood and can't deal with, anything medical, and it was so funny when you just said, like, in a pressure situation, that's where you absolutely shine. And when you told me about this situation with the guy that had been hit by a car and you were the first one there or crashed his bike, that actually you totally dealt with the situation because it was a high pressure situation. You didn't have any choice. You just went into this crazy mode of, okay, this is what I need to do, blah, 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 even though it was in a situation that you absolutely loathe and would normally totally crumble under. So and I was so proud of you at the time, of course, but now I get it because that's how you roll.
Yeah. But, well, when it's not my own kids, yeah. When it's my own kids.
When you're not thinking about it and you're just acting instinctively, which is, what we're all about, then you can see with Lauren's ID, Mary, she will really shine that way. But even the analysis afterwards, you can step back and you start thinking about it, and it just can frighten you because it's so at odds with what you thought you would be able to do and handle and so on. But it just shows when the pressure is really on and the instincts kick in, we can all do amazing things.
Totally. Adrenaline, right? That's the big rush of, you can basically do anything with a lot of adrenaline. Well,
and for those of you who have a similar ID to Lauren, when we often say when you're either thinking too hard or trying too hard, because then it's not sort of flowing freely. And so many people, once they sort of go, you know what, I don't give a stuff anymore. I'm just going to go with how I feel and let it flow, and then everything starts to happen because they're not trying to control it or shape it. They're letting their instincts guide them, and it makes for a very different result and much better happiness and fulfillment.
I don't think you're passionate about something. I feel like for me is that if you're on the right track is if you don't have to try and you're not forcing yourself to get up and do it, and you're not forcing yourself to want to, do things that don't sit right with you. When you're passionate, it doesn't matter if you work 12 hours a day because you love it. It's just, you without having that, when the passion's not there, you're just the 9 to 5 drag, and you're not. I think it's scary that some people don't ever get to find their passion or allow themselves to follow it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great. Greg just made a comment in the chat that when you're doing it from a place of passion, it doesn't feel like 12 hours. It just time flies. It's one of the ways that you're working from a place of passion is that time is irrelevant.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Hey, Lauren, there are some questions asked earlier. I want to honour the questions about using ID with your team, because I know when we first met, we did do some ID work with your team, and haven't for a while. And I know there are a number of sort of issues. I'm not sure how you might want to address them, but the question was basically, have you used it with your team, and you used ID, that is, and you know, what was the value of that, or you know, what have you done since, or just maybe talk for a couple. We don't have too much longer left, but maybe a couple of comments on that side.
I think back to, I mean, we did do this. I mean, the team is very different to what it was back then when we introduced this, but there are still some people there, and I remember you flagged with me they're not going to be long. You know, you would flag with some of us that who weren't going to be long term, and you were dead right, which was really, you know, really, I guess it gave us a sense of peace that what we were thinking and feeling, you know, was right. Do you remember Sam? So she's been with us from the very start. You said to us,
yes,
she was leading the styling team, and you said she's not that. She's a wood chopper. Give her a task and she'll just, you know, cut away all day long. She's head of projects, still with us and absolutely shining. She's not managing anyone. So that really gave us a lot of insight to her. We're kind of molding her into something because she had so much knowledge of the business. We're trying to put her in a box that you made us see that she definitely was not. And when we did her ID, we moved her role, and you know, she just keeps going from strength to strength. So and there's been some others too where because of the ID, we moved their roles and changed their roles. We will do it again. I mean, we have to do it again because we've actually got George, who's our head of people and culture. The last few years, we have, you know, a really heavy focus on our team and our leadership team. And we're doing, you know, we've invested heavily on, you know, leadership training and having, you know, how to have meaningful conversations with our leadership team, and then obviously funneling it down to the rest of the business. But the ID is something that, I mean, I guess the timing that you came into our business, anyway, we'll talk after this. I actually think we need to do it again with our senior management team and others. But it'd be interesting we use it when we interview people. We can tell what kind of ID they are just because we're aware of it, and the types we want to hire as well. So, and what type of ID they need for those certain roles. Like George, who is also head of strategy, is very similar to Jeff in terms of ID. You know, you need the executors, and then when we're looking at stylists, you know, we want to see that they can improvise and the different IDs. So having that knowledge of doing that early on in our business, I think has been really key. But something I think it should be every employee should pretty much have an ID done.
Well, they all have an ID. It's just a case of understanding it, isn't it? So, well, we can talk offline, but it's I think it's just it's been so valuable. The thing that stood out to me was, and this is so true for so many teams as well. In your case, if you just got you and Jeff right, that has a flow-on effect to the rest of the team as well. And I think there's so many people that, you know, try and help their teams or help others, but you've got to get yourself right. You know, get yourself in stride, find your own passion and purpose, get that with the people closest to you. And then the energy you radiate starts to lift and improve other people around you, separate to any work that you might do with them as well. So we've got time for maybe one more question, if there's a question that someone else in the group has that they'd like to ask of Lauren.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Lauren. Might not be a quick question, but just wondering how you and Jeff, how do you respect, I guess, your ID when it comes to parenting? And similar to business, do you also have your, okay, this is with you and this is with mine, and you just kind of go for it?
Oh, we could have so many laughs with this. So yes, Jeff and I, so with parenting, I mean, we have the same values, and we know the type of kids we want to raise and the things we want to instill in them. We're very solid on, in a united front. The things that we differ on is like, I'm like, eat your dinner on the couch, like, watch your favorite movie and eat on the couch, where he's like, oh, you got to be eating at the table. What about the couch? There's all these little things where I'm like, well, when Dad's gone, you eat on the couch. When Dad's here, we sit up like church mice, on the table. So I guess it's like, I respect when he's there. and vice versa. He tries, we try and compromise. But we know if he's parenting alone, I'm like, you do whatever you need to do when I'm not there, and when you're not there, I'll parent how I see fit. So there's just, I guess it's having mutual respect and compromise, and often talking about how we want to move forward with the kids. Like that's something that you need to have a united front. If there's not an option to be polar opposites. So we stand in the together on schooling, and like for instance, home readers. Jeff's like, you have to fill out the book every night to say what you've read. When I read, I forget to fill out the book. He's actually hair tied it to a thing because I lose it all the time, right? But he, as a verifier, is like, the school needs to know that he's read. I'm like, but they have read. I mean, we know they've read, so I don't need to write in the book. But over time, it's like, okay, I've got to write it in the book because that's going to make him feel better. And at the end of the day, it's the path of least resistance with him. But we've had to. It's just stumbling, right? It's always a work in progress. Parenting, new things come up all the time. But my best piece of advice is, you've got to want the same things and share the same values and morals as parents, as a united front. We do parent different. I'll do put some music on and dance like a lunatic around, the lounge room, whereas he'll take them and do soccer drills and have the cones out and 6 balls perfectly cleaned, whereas I'll just be like, oh, we'll put 2 shoes down and that's our goal. It's still the same thing, but we just do it differently, and I can't fault Jeff. He's a great dad, and he thinks I'm a great mum, which is really important. But yes, we definitely do things different, but we do the big things the same. The small things we let each other be who we are.
So such good advice. And so many people not only sweat the small stuff but lose their marriages or lose their kids over this sort of stuff, instead of just being able to go, hey, we're different, and we accept that about each other, and we revel in that, and the kids get to see that too, which inadvertently empowers them to be able to be themselves and not try and shape to a mold. So great work. Great work.
For us was like, I'm very social. I'm very big on good friendships and building community and all that. And when we started, when the kids started school, Jeff's like, sitting, he wouldn't talk to anyone at school or person, not that he's not a nice person or anything, but he wouldn't go out of his way to make friendships. Day one, I was like, right, I'm getting all the mums' numbers. I started organising all the the kids' play dates, and he was just like, I just can't do that, but how amazing, So for the kids, I've taught them how to build friendships and to always put effort into friends. And I'm like, after school, I'm like, well, let's go meet here, let's do this, let's do that. Whereas that's not Jeff's strong point, but I take that for the team because friendship is very important,
right,
to me, and it's a good quality to pass on to the kids. But there are things with Jeff, like he'll read their school reports, and he makes sure that there's some other really important things that I'm hopeless at. He takes charge of, so which is really cool, because that kind of stuff I'm just not great at.
So important. Hey, Lauren, unfortunately we've run right out of time. We only had the hour, but you have been wonderful with your energy and your contribution. I think for a lot of people who are like you, it's so inspiring and so validating just to hear the same way you think, but from a different mind. And it just is really uplifting. And for people who are different to you and maybe married to people like you or working with people like you, it's just very helpful to hear, how you roll. So thanks for giving up your time and your heart and coming and sharing that with us today. And we'll connect with you a little later and catch up again.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening, hey?
Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks on our next ID Mastery class. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.